This is a gesture of love. I'm open to you. Suck it to me.
He's a seeker and a prophet, a villain and a pariah. Timothy Leary, the high priest of LSD. One of the most polarizing and controversial figures of the 60s.
His ideas were so powerful in and of themselves that he could spark an entire revolution.
They call me the seeker. I've been searching low and high.
This is the story of a man who pushes the boundaries of psychedelic experience.
The best, most direct, the most natural way to find God is through mind-expanding drugs.
Leary's influence helped shape the music, fashion, and politics of a new generation, becoming the unabashed leader of the psychedelic movement.
He felt that if you could expand your consciousness, you could see through all of the bullshit that authority figures were shoveling into society.
I'm a seeker, I'm a really desperate man.
But to his enemies, he's an irresponsible scoundrel.
He's considered a Pied Piper, thus a threat to American youth.
That poisonous, evil man, Dr. Timothy Leary.
And the authorities will stop at nothing to bring him down.
Nixon called him the most dangerous man in the world. He was dangerous to Nixon. He was good for America.
Let the kids get high. As a matter of fact, President Nixon, why don't we all turn on together?
I won't get what I'm after till the day I die.
These are the counterculture icons who changed the world. In this hour, Timothy Leary, Lords of the Revolution.
Turn on, tune in, drop out.
In the beginning was the turn on, the acid guru will later write, the electric trip. But in 1959, after the recent suicide of his wife, Dr. Timothy Leary is looking for a new start. An up-and-coming professor of psychology, Tim moves to Cambridge with his 2 children and begins lecturing at Harvard.
Psychology was like the hottest thing going, and he was right in the middle of that. He's square, he's academic. That's the image Tim had.
I was a graduate student at Harvard University in social psychology, and Timothy was assigned to be my advisor. He and I had encounters every weekend about drugs because I was experimenting with mescaline. And he'd say, "George, you're a fairly intelligent person. Why are you fooling around with drugs? It's just manipulating behavior. Drugs are just manipulating behavior."
Very little is known about psychedelic substances. It takes Leary a year of hearing about them before he decides to take the leap.
He was looking for a change, and he was curious.
As I had been trying to explain to him, these drugs do open up another level of consciousness.
So on a summer vacation in Mexico, when a friend raves about his wondrous experience with magic mushrooms, Leary utters the words that will completely transform his life. Why don't you see if you can find some?
That first trip in 1960 changed him. He called it the most profound experience of his life that changed him forever.
I learned more about psychology in the 5 hours after taking these mushrooms than I had in the preceding 15 years of studying, doing research in psychology. It was a very humiliating experience because I saw how dishonest I had been in my past life and how smug and arrogant I had been in thinking that I was so smart, that I was a highly educated psychologist.
He came back from Mexico and just completely cleaned off his desk of all this interpersonal diagnosis stuff and then jumped right into his researching of the mushroom.
Tim discovers that psilocybin, a synthesized form of the magic mushroom, is easily obtainable from a company in New Jersey and completely legal.
We sat down that very afternoon, we wrote a letter to Sandoz Pharmaceuticals. They just sent us huge amounts of psilocybin, bottles full. I thought we would have got forms to fill out, but these materials were in a very strange category we have of drugs that are for research.
Leary assembles a group of about 30 bright academics and embarks on the research that will all but turn the university upside down, the Harvard Psilocybin Project. The goal is simple. Take the drug, see what happens, and record the experiences. For students and colleagues like Doctors Ralph Metzner and Richard Alpert, it's only the beginning of an incredible period of experimentation and metamorphosis.
Nobody knew any more than anybody else, you see, including Tim. We were all just babes in the woods.
Everything falls apart. All learned structures, all thought patterns, all beliefs, opinions, emotional convictions, positive or negative, they all fall apart.
I met my inner being that I had never known before.
I came up out of the ocean, and I was just getting rid of my gills, and I was climbing up, and I was experiencing the whole evolution of species. And during that time, I also was seeing art pieces I'd seen in the Museum of Modern Art. And I was in an airplane above the clouds. This was all happening, just image after image, thousands of images a second.
For the next 2 years, Tim conducts several controversial experiments, including testing the effects of psilocybin on hardened criminals and divinity students. He also gives the pills to people in the hip underground, like jazz musician Dizzy Gillespie, writer Jack Kerouac, and beat poet Allen Ginsberg.
Ginsberg had a very intense trip, a messianic trip, where he came and walked into Leary's living room naked.
Allen Ginsberg, totally naked, on the phone, saying, yes, I want the White House, Washington, D.C., and then after you get them on the line, I want the Kremlin, USSR. So he was trying to set up a conference call to settle all this. It wasn't needed, all this Cold War stuff.
Ginsberg had a really strong sense of the need to change society, and when these two forces collided, this set off a spark in Leary, and the rest is history.
Harvard has let Leary pursue his research without any interference. But as rumors of naked beatnik poets circulate around campus, and with Leary's popularity growing, storm clouds gather.
All the graduate students only came to us because they heard you could get psychedelics from Alpert and Leary. 28
of the 29 graduate students signed up to work with one of the two of them. And all these other people that had no graduate students. And they stood up in a public meeting of the faculty and said something's wrong. Said this could not be normal. This is not normal. He's giving drugs to these people and brainwashing them.
We're labeled in the public's mind perhaps as drug professors, or we're not concerned with the drugs. We're mainly concerned with man's head.
The media now discovers an irresistible story. Harvard eats the holy mushroom. Students and teachers taking wild, mind-altering drugs. With controversy mounting, Harvard quickly puts the psilocybin supply under lock and key. But Tim is undaunted. By now, he's discovered LSD.
LSD is the most powerful of all the psychedelic, mind-opening chemicals.
The man who introduces this new substance into the group is Michael Hollingshead. A divine rascal, as Leary calls him, who shows up at Harvard with a mayonnaise jar filled with a paste that contains some 5,000 doses of LSD.
My dad said to Tim, you've got to try this. It's not like psilocybin. The acid is just so much stronger. It's so much more potent. And we believe that you see God.
People were very worried the first time he took LSD. In fact, I think Richard Alpert said, we've lost Timothy.
Tim didn't say a word for about 5 days. And I, being the second in command, said to everybody, don't take this because look what's happened to Tim. Then Tim said, it's wonderful. And we were all on the bandwagon.
To me, it was a complete religious, revelatory experience. It was as though God had taken me by the hand into his workshop and had let me look just for a few minutes at the design of 5 billion years of energy that had been developing and evolving on this planet.
He said the Catholic Church could be reborn all over again if they just discovered the new sacrament. It's not the little wafer, it's the psychedelic drop.
Leary's epiphany is that LSD is a tool that blows away all the artificial conventions of modern society by allowing people to see the truth of who they really are. Everything else is a mere game, and Tim is tired of playing the game of Harvard.
We gotta get out of this place. Here it's the last thing we ever do.
Harvard is a place where the intellect rules, and psychedelics are putting the intellect in a box, and they didn't like it because it wasn't intellectual. It was mystical.
In the spring of 1963, Harvard terminates the project, but Tim is already long gone.
He was finished with his classes, you know, his contract ran out. They didn't want him there. And he didn't want to be there anymore after a while.
Dr. Timothy Leary is now on a mission to change the world.